Bunny. My name's Chris Carr.
And I'm Kristen Johnson.
How are you guys? Happy Saturday.
Happy dreary Saturday from New England.
New England, it is storming. It's a good time to curl up with a grimoire and a candle and read a good book. For example, this one.
That's right.
A Short History of Nearly Everything Paranormal. This is from our guest last week, Terje Simonsen. And as promised, we did order this book, and it's fantastic. I'm not that far into it yet, but just reading the introduction alone, I probably learned 15 things I did not know. If you're interested in clairvoyance, precognition, telepathy, and the history of the paranormal, this is a book for you. So thanks again to our guest last week, Terje, and we really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And that we had a great time talking to you and a lot of laughs. You can check that episode out if you haven't seen it in the archives, so wherever you're watching this program now. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that we did receive a great deal of hate mail last week from the No Bird movement. They're apparently not very happy with us.
No.
Bringing to light the fact they don't believe in birds.
So the beginning of this is what happened. This is what they think, that in 2001, the United States government got rid of and eradicated every single bird and replaced them with drones. And
they're all drones now watching us, and
drones, and
we don't know what's in the chicken nuggets, so
even their poop. Yes,
or eating at Thanksgiving. We don't really know what's going on with that.
Yeah, so as far as we got into that. Thank you.
So you guys can stop the hate mail. But however, if you, the listener, watcher of this live stream, would like to reach out to Bigfoot and the Bunny, please do so at bigfootandthebunny@gmail.com, or you can find our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Bigfoot and the Bunny. And and we're also getting ready. It is our anniversary.
Yes, it is 6 years.
Yes, it is. And for the last 3 now, well, this will be the 3rd, we have had a tradition, and that tradition is we go to our favorite boneyard, Spidergates, which is really Friends Cemetery in Leicester, Massachusetts, but is known affectionately and in the paranormal community as Spidergates.
Right.
And it is open to the public during the day, and that's when we go, and it's quite haunted. And if you'd like some information on Spidergates and what that's about, and Google doesn't tell you enough, do seek out our archive shows. Wherever you're watching this, we've talked extensively about that and the particular spirits that we came across, collected amazing data there. And also our Dark Horse Paranormal podcast, available anywhere you get your podcasts. So do look for that. There was Toby, the Gatekeeper.
The Gatekeeper is awesome.
There was some great AM band stuff that we got, the evil AM band at Spidergates. And it is quite haunted. But anyways, we've got a great show for you. We are having some internet issues.
They are from across the pond. They are Clarke and Gary Jones from the Pentyrch incident.
That's correct.
Now, they're having a storm over there, so their internet is a little bit, we noticed in the beginning, it's
a little shaky.
Yeah, set up.
We're going to do our best. They have an amazing story to tell.
Yes.
As I understand, I believe they were non-believers in UFOs, UAP phenomena, and they actually witnessed something, and apparently the government did not want them talking about it.
No, it's a huge government cover-up, and we'll let you, we have some pictures as they go along that we're going to show you.
That's right. We have a slideshow to present. So we're going to bring them on now. Let's see. Click the right button here. There we are.
Camera on.
Oh, beautiful.
Very good.
Hey, Gary and
Kaz.
And Kaz, how are you? Thank you for joining Bigfoot and the Bunny today and taking time out of your evening, because I believe it is evening there, to talk with us. Can you hear us okay?
What would you like us to do now?
I think the audio should be a little bit better, so thank you for disabling the cam. We're going to bring up the slideshow, and we'd just like you guys to tell us your background and tell us about the Pentyrch incident.
Here we go. I think we're going okay now.
Okay, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear
Yes.
you. Can you hear us? Seems like there's a little bit of a delay.
The microphone is still on.
Yep, I can hear
Can
you.
you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're doing their intro. That's why they're.
No, intro's on.
Yeah, so the internets are not
She's not
agreeing with
frozen.
this
She's
too well.
moving.
Yeah, we're good.
On.
Go ahead and start your story. We've already got a lot of comments
Got a
out
lot of
there.
comments.
Hello, friend. I love the rain. What is the name of the book? I was talking about Terry Simonson's book, and then that's a short history of nearly everything paranormal. That was from Melinda.
Hi, Ann.
Hey, Ann, how are you doing?
Don't mess with our birds, huh?
Don't mess with those birds. I also want to mention the Temple Fear Fest Paracon. It's coming up for the Paranormal United Network.
Hi, Courtney.
Hey, Courtney, how you doing? And all right, let's see how these guys are. Knew about. I thought everyone knew about birds. Yes,
That's crazy humans. I couldn't even read the rest
that's
of
a
it.
real thing.
It
Yeah,
is
birds.
something.
I don't know what those sounds are.
You have to look into it, and
We get a kick out of that.
Yeah.
Although I suppose they don't appreciate us as
No,
much
they
as we
don't
appreciate them. But we are hoping that Kaz and
yeah,
Gary can hear us and begin the story.
also trying to get a hold of them.
They can hear you. Go ahead and start.
Thank you.
Damn internet gremlins. They get us every time.
Thank you for almost letting me spit water out my nose. The crickets.
Standing by for carrying Gary and Kaz. Did you message them?
I did.
They can just start. If they can't hear us, we can hear them. Guys. I wonder how the storm is doing over there.
Yeah, that's what they were telling us to, when earlier we were trying to
You can go ahead and just start. We can hear you.
Kaz, check your messenger.
Okay, standing by. This is the first photo of many.
Of a lot.
Of a lot.
Yes, this is an amazing story. It happened in 2016. It's called the Pentyrch incident. And like we said, they were non-believers, and it's a big thing with them. I mean, even her, the government came to silence her and her children from saying anything. I can't wait till she says that part. But we had talked extensively for a few months about this. And I couldn't wait to get them on, and this is what happens. Again,
Well, internet gremlins follows her around.
yeah.
So.
Again, it's their side. They're having a massive storm where they live in, I believe, in England.
Yeah, we'll give this another couple minutes, see if we can get it together. Otherwise, maybe we'll delve into Spider Gates and talk a little bit about that. We can do a plan B if we can reschedule
Plan
this.
C.
Plan C.
Plan C. Chicken Little.
If needed. So stand by, folks.
Can hear them.
Anything, guys? Testing 1, 2. Testing for echo. we got some really cool pictures that we want to show you guys and tell you all about this Pentyrch incident. It occurred in 2016 and has been repressed. The local governments there in the UK.
Linda Moulton Hall even commented on this as well.
Maybe alien interference, Anita Allen says.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for the live stream. Well, stand by. We have a show either way.
We can always reschedule with them.
Yeah, we may have to reschedule. And I'm sorry, guys. We're just not getting anything at this point. And if you could drop and rejoin, we could try it that way. Sometimes that helps.
It's odd.
But I don't think they can hear us.
They were hearing us.
They were.
It's
We
odd.
did sound check, and
Yeah,
it was working. It was just a little
20 minutes.
sketch. It was a little sketchy.
A little sketch.
A little sketch. But it was still there. It seemed viable, and I asked that to disable the camera, but now I'm not hearing anything. So I think
We could have.
we'll take them off. Let me send them a message. There we go. I think they're gonna try to rejoin. So maybe they can hear us. I'm not sure, and maybe we're not hearing them. I'll give that a minute. But we will tell you a little bit about a friend's cemetery in the lovely Leicester, Massachusetts. And this is out in the woods. It's a pretty interesting place.
Yeah, you have to walk to it.
You do. You take a road, and it's not a main road, and you pull over, and then you got to walk about a quarter mile into the woods down a path. It's near a reservation. And
It's beautiful.
it is a Quaker cemetery. And it's still, it's mostly, I would say, 99% old graves going back to
1600s.
1700s, yeah.
Late 1600s.
Quite
There's
old.
3 of them.
There's a lot of legends that surround it.
Mhm.
And this is a case where the legends seem to almost dictate the haunt, if you will. So many people do go there, and it's I don't want to say it's busy, but we have gone on busy days where there will be several people,
Reservoir cops.
checking it out and walking around, and we've made some friends down there. I do see Kaz and Gary rejoining, so let's see how.
You hear us now?
Yeah, hey,
Yes,
how
we
are
can hear
you?
you.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear us?
Hello.
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 Yes, we can hear you.
Faintly.
Oh,
Faintly,
there we
yeah.
go. There we
You
go.
are-
Well,
Where's the volume?
you guys are good start. If you want to just go start your story, we can introduce you, and we're ready to go.
Okay.
Okay.
Ready?
Are we
I'm gonna-
back?
Yeah.
You're back. We're gonna
Great. Fantastic.
Okay. Let's start.
here we
begin.
go. Pentyrch incident, 2016. What happened? And tell us about your story.
Thank you. Apologies to everyone. We're having a massive storm over here and our internet is being interrupted. This started for me on Tuesday, the 23rd of February, when I noticed this particular small grey twin propeller plane flying very low over my village. And on the Tuesday, I didn't really pay it any mind because we have RAF St. Athan 14 miles away from here. And so we get military aircraft all the time. It was Wednesday, the 24th, if you can flip to the next slide,
Sure.
when we really started to notice the behavior of this aircraft. And this second plane, almost identical to the first one, came and took the first plane's place. And this plane would continue the same circular flight pattern. And this went on day and night. Now, one of my neighbours, David, had come out of his house and he was cursing because this propeller plane had kept him awake all night. And when someone's pointed a sound out to you, that's really all you can anticipate it coming back. And so every 15 minutes, this plane would fly over my house. And so Wednesday night, I got a very restless night. Going into Thursday morning, David had already emailed the Ministry of Defence. He'd emailed Wales Online, our local news outlet, and nobody knew anything about this. Nobody would answer us. And it was quite clear that they were watching for something. And David was convinced that they were watching for Russian bombers. And I know that sounds outrageous, but it was a week before, on Tuesday, the 18th of February 2016, that our Royal Air Force had turned away 2 Tu-160 bombers, Russian bombers, from our airspace. So he was figuring that we were going to see some kind of real-life dogfight or some escorting of foreign aircraft from our airspace. We checked the radar, the flight radar, and the entire Welsh airspace had been closed. We do have the radar returns on the next slides, which can show you the flight patterns of these 2 aircraft. If you would flick to the next one. That's ZG996. That's the second aircraft that you saw. And you can see the radar returns and how often it was flying over just Pentyrch, over and over and over again, and low enough for the pilots to be able to see us, notice them.
Wow.
So that they fly out and then come back and continue the same flight pattern. And the next radar return that you've got will also show the second plane, ZZ418, again, flying just over Pentyrch. Day and night this went on for 3 days and 3 nights continuously. If you go to the next slide, please. This was the email that David had sent to Wales Online, our local news outlet, on Wednesday, the 24th of February 2016, to complain about these aircraft and ask if they knew anything. And they chose to ignore us. And if you can go to the next slide, please.
Sure. We see that February 24th, 2016.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
Okay. We checked the radar. This is civilian radar. And there was no mention of these 2 aircraft. And all civilian aircraft have been deterred around Wales, not just South Wales. The whole of the Welsh airspace was closed.
Wow.
Now, no NOTAM had been issued. That's a notice to airmen. No exercise had been listed. Nothing. Nobody was acknowledging anything. And when you've eliminated everything else, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. And clearly they were watching for something, but we had no idea what it was. So we decided that if they were still there Thursday night, that we would go out and watch with them, which is what we did.
A bit like Arkham's Razor. It's like the most obvious, simplest solution is probably the accurate one.
Right. So we went to my back garden and I lit the fire pit. It was February. It was freezing. And we started to watch this plane, by the ZZ418 plane, call sign Snake 48. And it is a reconnaissance and surveillance aircraft. And it is an above top secret aircraft. And by this time now, it's starting to fly figure 8 patterns directly over the top of my house. So the flyovers became more and more frequent. Every 5 to 7 minutes, it was flying over my house. And it got to about 2 o'clock in the morning, to be honest with you. And I was getting particularly frustrated and bored with watching this small plane. Nothing seemed to be happening. And I said to David, look, you know, I'm going to go in. It's getting late. I'm tired. And I just got to the back door of my house and I heard what I thought was a missile coming. So I've run back out to the back of my garden to look up to see this huge plane fly over the top. This is the plane, a NATO E3 Sentry plane.
Whoa.
And David had exclaimed, that's an E3 Sentry. Well, for me, that doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know what an E3 Sentry plane was. Excuse me. But because this plane had turned up, we decided that we'd stay and watch a bit longer. And this E3 Sentry started the circle, not small circles. I said previously that I estimated it took about 5 minutes to go around once, but I think it was less than that. It could have been 2 minutes to go around once. And David had said, well, perhaps it's taxiing for the airport. And I couldn't see why an E3 Sentry would be taxiing for an international airport, which is closed at night.
Right.
On the 7th time that it went around, one red light became visible high above the fields behind my house. And I don't know if you can click to the next slide.
Yes.
There you go.
And David, we called for Donna, one of our other neighbours who'd been watching with us that night, and I didn't get an answer, but we'd ran to there's a 5-bar gate that overlooks the farmland that ebbs away from you for miles behind my house.
Mhm.
And David had gone running into the field, and I'd called him back because the military were there, because I didn't want us to appear to be hostile. And 1 red light turned into 3 red lights. If you go to the next slide. In a triangular formation, but what you don't see there, because that's a 2-dimensional picture, was it came in point first on the oblique angle and turning very, very slowly anti-clockwise. As it did so, it came down in a pendulum motion and righted itself in front of us, about 200 yards away, behind, or above, I should say, the row of trees, that section off the next field. And if you can go to the next slides and play them through, what you'll see is that this red light turned into a full-sized pyramid.
Yes.
Yes.
It's not showing on my side. Yes.
Yeah, it might be a little
The
bright.
right-hand set of lights were always brighter than the rest, as if somehow that side was the steering mechanism for this craft. And when it was in the upright position, it fired a really bright green object out of the top of it. Now, I can't tell you what shape that was, just that it was too bright, brighter than the moonlight. It was like a bright green star, and it was fired out the top like it had been fired out of a cannon. And it skipped across and above the trees to my left-hand side and just stayed there, gently rocking backwards and forwards. There were other aircraft in a ring all the way around us, possibly 14, 15 miles out, 5 of them that we could count. The E3 Sentry was still above us, and that by now was flying in an oval flight pattern above all of this going on.
Okay, so they're both in the sky at the same time. You see the E3, you see this red pyramid appear,
Yeah,
dropping out by the red lights that border it, and then
Yeah.
it's shooting like a green light.
out of the top, which moved to my left-hand side and just stopped above the trees, just rocking gently backwards and forwards.
To give us
The
some
pyramid,
where is the E3?
the E3 Sentry was still above us, flying in an oval flight pattern
Okay,
above this pyramid.
okay.
The pyramid's turning slowly anti-clockwise, but moving backwards away from us and listed to the right-hand side.
So
And
this,
sorry.
this okay, I'm sorry. There's a question. So this green object is basically an orb. It shot out an orb.
Well, it shot something out. I couldn't tell you what shape it was because it was too bright. You know, if I'd had, say, a welding glass or something, I may have been able to see the shape of it, but I couldn't see the shape of it because it was so bright.
All right.
As I say, the pyramid was still turning slowly anti-clockwise and had listed to the right-hand side. And as it moved backwards, I stood on the 5-bar gate and I said to David, "It's landing," thinking it was coming down. When in reality, it's the ground that rises there because that's the foot of the Garth Mountain. So the land was coming up to meet it. And as it neared the ground, it ejected this, well, I described it like a hand of lightning, exactly that. And the whole thing lit up really brightly. And the lights on the right-hand side of the ship and closest to the ground turned bright white orange. Now, this wasn't thin lightning like we see here. This was thick, like flames, like fire-colored lightning.
Right, just for clarity, this is our artistic rendition.
This is just an artistic, yes, rendition, and not a good one either.
Depending on the device, a person's watching this on, they may not know.
Sorry about the feedback.
No, that's fine. We do have some new witnesses that have come forward. They do have photographs and a video that they're yet to release. I don't know what the delay is in releasing the video, but they seem to have captured the large craft and all of the objects that came out of it. So
Wow.
I'm waiting to see that.
I'd love to see that.
Right, we all are. They have released some of the pictures of the objects. I did send some to you, Kristen, on Facebook,
Yes, you did.
in Messenger.
You did.
Right. Well, whilst I was looking at the bottom of this pyramid, I couldn't see the top, such was the size of it from 200 yards away. So this thing was enormous. And whilst I was looking at the bottom, David was looking at the top. And he said he saw 15 or 20, he described as orb-like objects come out of the top of this pyramid that just seemed to stay around the very top of this pyramid. He described as if in a dance with each other. And I could sit here and tell you that I saw them when I genuinely didn't, because I was fixated on it touching the ground. And don't ask me why, I have no idea. Anyway, I heard 2 military planes coming. Big, there are 2 big engines on each wing. I now know to be 2 C-17s, and I only know this through the evidence that Gary's managed to get. And I was still standing on the gate, and I've looked up just to see these 2 planes go over the top of me. And when I looked back, I couldn't see the pyramid anymore. But that's not to say that it wasn't there, just that I couldn't see it. And we had 2 big C-130 gunships, big propeller, 2 propeller engines on each wing. And they too came from my left-hand side and came back in behind the 2 C-17s. So you got 2 C-17s in close and 2 C-130s out wide. And between them, they took up an enormous airspace. And this green object, the first one that was fired out of the pyramid, had shot across the sky so quickly and in front of these aircraft and fired 3 really bright strobes at these aircraft, and then seemed to get excited somehow that we were following it. I believe it was some kind of deliberate decoy to draw the aircraft away from the pyramid. And it skipped away. I want to describe like Tigger off Winnie the Pooh, like excited, really excited that we were following it. And it skipped and bobbed and skipped and bobbed. And it wasn't in a hurry. The speed in which that thing could travel, if it wanted to outrun those aircraft, it could have done so quite easily. But it didn't. It wanted the attention. It wanted to draw the aircraft away. And I just remember standing on the gate and watching this thing until I couldn't see it anymore. But it was so bright, it bathed all of the aircraft in this green light. And you could see all the outline of the engines and the fuselages of all of these 4 aircraft. And the E-3 Sentry was still above us. After the green object had gone out of sight, we were approached by 2 barrel-shaped objects, about the size of a small car. They were completely silent. They moved from my right-hand side. That's them, the barrels. And one stopped above the hedge about 20 feet away from me and about 20 feet up. And I stared at it just for a few seconds because I wanted the details. I needed to see it. And the insides were moving. I described it like white noise on a TV screen, but it was more 3D than that. It was like turning in on itself, like a cake mix almost. And then I looked to see where the second one was, and that hadn't stopped. And by that time, that was over the oak tree right above me. And the only thing I could think to do was to wave. With all the military activity that was going on that night, I didn't want them to think that we were hostile.
Sure.
And this object scanned us. It turned my hair white overnight. I did hear spoken words, but it felt like someone had reached in and took the fear away from me. Like a euphoric feeling, almost like pure love. It was angelic almost. And this object changed colour from tail light red to traffic light green when it scanned us. And then I did hear a man's voice say, "Tell the world what you witnessed here," in my head.
Telepathic.
And it wasn't my and my simple answer was, "I will." And the green object moved away to my right-hand side above the rooftops, above the houses. And the red object that had remained sentry the whole time moved away to my left-hand side and down across the fields. And I watched that until I couldn't see it anymore. And David and I had walked down to the field where this pyramid had come in, because this pyramid didn't come down from outer space. This pyramid emerged in the space, like it came through an invisible fog.
Like
It was the military knew it was coming,
that's odd.
and they were waiting for it here.
Interdimensional.
It came through. Yes, it emerged gradually. First one light, then another, until it was fully here. And when it was fully here, then it released everything. And I believe it turned and went back the way it came, but there's a possibility now that it didn't, that it was actually still here somewhere. I just couldn't see it, like it switched its lights off, because there is no, there are no street lights or anything behind me. It's all farmland.
Mhm.
Anyway, David and I had walked down to where this pyramid had come in, because he said he saw 15 or 20 of these objects. But it was so dark and slippery underfoot, and we're talking about a mountain in the middle of nowhere. And as much as we had a full moon that night, it was still dark and slippery and uneven underfoot. But we couldn't see anything else. So we walked back to the gate where we'd observed all of this. And we heard the helicopters coming. There were 3 Apache helicopters that we could see. The E3 Sentry was still above us. And they were flying in a triangular formation, one above 2. And their slow red pulsing lights going out in front of them on an interception course with where the green object had gone before. We watched those as well until we couldn't see them anymore. We even ran around the front of the houses to see if we could get a better view up the valley. But by the time we got there, they'd already gone. So we walked back to my house. And within just a few short minutes, we heard an enormous explosion. I mean, this was huge. This was so big. From the Llantrisant area, which was 5 miles away from me. And I could hear it. David heard it. And I don't know if you want to move on to the next slide. This is the gate where we observed all of this from. And the row of trees that you see across and in front of you was where this pyramid had come in. And again, if you flick to the next slide.
Can I just ask you a question before we
Sure.
move on? When you say the pyramid was by that row of trees, I'm trying to get an idea of the scale. You know, I'm familiar. We're familiar with the
Well, I'm sure
Pentyrch
Gary.
pyramid and the Kremlin one that kind of hung over those buildings, and it was pretty.
I've seen
big.
footage of it,
Yes.
and it is on a par with that.
It's
I
on a-
estimate it was about 600 feet across.
Wow.
But in my peripheral vision, whilst I was looking at the bottom, I couldn't see the top of it from this gateway. So how tall is that?
Right. Oh,
The top of the pyramid would actually be off the page in this photograph. Right, that's where I'm standing in this photograph now. The left-hand picture is where that red barrel had stopped, above this hedge where I'm standing, looking at the gateway from the other side. And where my hand is raised in the right-hand picture to this lower branch is where that green barrel came in. And it's actually the branch on the tree now is completely dead where this object came in.
wow.
And we believe because of the really high EMF that these things let out.
Hmm.
But I'll allow Gary will talk about that kind of evidence.
What about like radiation? Did Geiger counter anything?
Right.
Radiation.
Yes, there was radiation found here. There's very high EMF found here.
Mhm.
And it followed the decay rate for radiation of exactly 113.5 days because we tested it every year afterwards.
Wow.
And it wasn't close to the radiation decay rate. It was precise. And it's beta radiation that was found.
Wow.
And that's the viewpoint for where we could see the Apache helicopters going low across the fields.
Right.
From the
So
left
in the
to the
barrels
right
in the
side.
pyramid, and now you start seeing helicopters.
Right, they were Apache helicopters, 3 of them. And they were pushing all the trees in the hedgerows and flat with the force of their rotor blades because they were so low. And they were moving from left to right on an interception course with where the green object had gone before. So if you could go to the next one.
Sure.
Sure.
Thanks. No slide.
Yep, it's coming.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there's a short delay.
Well, it was I don't know how I slept that night, but the next morning, Wells Online had put the cover story up that this was a military exercise. Well, because I didn't believe in UFOs, I wasn't a member of any groups or anything. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to talk about UFOs. So as soon as they put this cover story up, how military training planes and helicopters kept parts of South Wales awake, I immediately placed a comment on Wales Online, which said, "Thanks for sharing this, but I can categorically state that this was no exercise. Last night I saw absolutely everything, and what they were chasing were not planes. I will take a lie detector anywhere for anyone, but what I witnessed last night will stay with me for the rest of my life. What is more, the military knew they were coming and had a spotter plane in the air for 2 days waiting for the event. And when it came, 4 planes chased the green object, whilst a spotter plane circled approximately 6 red oval objects, which formed a pyramid shape. Several red spheres hovered silently above the fields until the helicopters came." And I had 2 debunkers. One called themselves the Smoking Man, who used a fake Facebook profile. Yeah, and the other one called themselves Agent Fox Mulder. Well, the Smoking Man said, "LOL, good one, laugh out loud." Well, I love a bit of sarcasm, and if you could flick to the next one.
Let's see. There we go. Okay, it's up now.
Okay.
Smolder.
Well, it's a small delay here.
Molder.
I said something along the lines, yes, well, it was good. You may have chased and shot down the green object, but you left all the others here, didn't you? Yes, it was good. In fact, it was amazing. Actually, you should use the name the Smoking Man. After all, isn't it his job to debunk real events? Yeah, answer this. When do they use live ammunition in an exercise over a residential area? Answer, never. And one other thing, they may have chased and shot down the green object, but they didn't get the red ones, did they? Because they were all still here. And again, Agent Fox Mulder got involved, again with a fake Facebook profile. Actually, it's my job. And they wouldn't say anything after that. But these weren't the only comments. There were other comments from members of the public, and they will be on next 2 slides, so you can show those.
I'm sorry, I just want
because
one thing that you mentioned. When you said that they shot down the green barrel-shaped object. Is this the green
object, yeah.
And
the first green object that came out.
what did that look like? Were the effects
Well, I couldn't tell you. Again, it was so bright. I couldn't tell you what shape it was because it was so bright. It actually hurt my eyes to look at it because it was so bright.
Was that you heard?
Sorry?
Was that the explosion you heard from?
an explosion?
Yes.
Okay,
So it was the green object that drew the planes away and the helicopters intercepted. We now believe the Apache helicopter was responsible for shooting that object down, so much so that it had to do an emergency landing at Cardiff International Airport. But again, Gary will show you the evidence for this. It was actually caught in the kinetic wave, and the kinetic wave was so powerful that it rocked the Royal Glamorgan Hospital to its foundations. It physically shook patients awake in their beds and residents in their homes. It set off all the car alarms in every street, not in one street, not one car, all the cars. This was a huge explosion, so much so that it registered on the Richter scale 40 miles away in Monmouth. This was not a small fake incendiary device, which is what the military defense want you to believe. When we asked about the explosion, they told us it was a fake incendiary. Well, a fake incendiary has no more noise than a firework and does not have any kinetic energy at all. This was a missile, and they did a meticulous metal search over Llantrisant Common to pick up parts of the missile that they fired that night. When we asked them why they picked up and did this meticulous metal search, we were told Section 26, not in the public interest. So they do community service for the council at 4:30 in the morning, picking up bits of metal like old bikes and old cars that have been on the common for several years in the early hours of the morning for no particular reason. Anyway, going back to what had happened, the comments that were on Wales Online and Twitter for residents that lived in that area wanted to know about the helicopters over Llantrisant Common, the explosions that were heard. I wanted to know what had happened to this green object. So the very same morning, we'd gone out to the field to start with, where this hand of lightning had come down, expecting to see burn marks on the ground.
Sure.
But there weren't any. Everything was dead. all the grass was dead, all the bushes were dead, like something had sucked all of the life out of them. And the other peculiar thing that was there was that it was snowing just in the one field, not in the surrounding fields, just in that field. Like something had disturbed the resonance there. I can't explain it. And it wasn't real snow. The texture was wrong. These are some of the comments that I can read out if you like. I'm assuming that this is your chopper that kept me awake for hours on end. What's going on? Because nobody knew anything. And another one, nightmare. There was an explosion at 3ish, and at one point there were 3 copters or helicopters. Again, if you I don't know if you want to leave that up for people to read, but it's a little bit small for me. But I think the interesting one was that Wells Online at the bottom of that now are saying, we're currently working on a story about this. So if this was an exercise, you'd have thought that the news would have known.
No,
But
they told people first. Yeah.
They didn't know a thing. These are pictures of the gorse bushes 18 months or 20 months after the event that were still dead from having all of the life sucked out of them. There's an area in the field that we call the board patch where nothing grows. All the grass there now is virgin grass, if you like. But the rest of the fields are covered in this snake grass. But where this hand of lightning came down, it's just like a smooth carpet. There's nothing else that grows there. Okay, this is Llantrisant Common. This is the view. The big hill in the distance is Smilog Woods. Now, I'd gone to Llantrisant Common because that was my starting point the very same morning to find out what had happened to this green object. And when we got to the common, we saw all the metal had been stacked up along the roadside. And I couldn't help thinking to myself, well, the first brass lorry that comes along is going to have his day done and dusted in one go. Right. Because the military had picked up every piece of metal on that common in the early hours of the morning. And there were Chinooks and choppers that were circling for hours. Multiple troops on the ground doing this search, and they'd sectioned off areas using yellow tape once the area had been searched.
Now
and I stopped
that metal, I'm going to interrupt you. What did it?
That was part of the Freedom of Information request that Gari submitted. Why were the military conducting searches for metal on the Llantrisant Common as seen by witnesses during this exercise? And the information is withheld under Section 26, not in the public interest.
Right.
Okay. Well, I spoke to 2 people walking their dog there that morning, bearing in mind this is the morning after the night before, to ask them if they knew anything. And they told me that the first explosion was an air explosion. And that was also reported in the Daily Mirror online, that the first explosion was an air explosion. And I'm yet to see the Ministry of Defence place a fake incendiary device in the sky, but apparently they did that night. And the second explosion sounded like something had hit the ground from Smilog Woods. Well, because I wasn't from there, I didn't know where Smilog Woods was located. And I felt quite a fool, really, when they pointed to this enormous wooded hill that rises behind the Royal Glamorgan Hospital. So we immediately went to Smilog Woods. And because I knew the trajectory of the green object, it wasn't long before we found the debris trail. And we are talking 60-foot trees. Yeah, this is a picture of, you've got Llantrisant Common on your right-hand side, the big green area. The building in the middle, on the left-hand side of the main road that runs through there, is the Royal Glamorgan Hospital. And then on the far left of the picture, the right-hand picture, is the beginning of Smilog Woods. Okay. So what they've done is they've incapacitated the craft over the common. It's flown over the top of the hospital and through Smilog Woods and crashed into Smilog Woods. When we found the debris trail, there were 60-foot trees that had exploded. They were mid-trunk in a perfectly straight line as far as the eye could see. Huge branches lay left and right of us. Bits of the tree trunk were here, there, and everywhere. And we fought our way through the woods. We got so far, I was with a friend of mine, Steve, who'd driven me over there. And I said, look, let's go back and tell the others what we found, because I wanted to find the debris trail. Okay, this slide is important because the radar return that you see in the top right-hand picture there, that's now circling Smilog Woods after it's left here in the early hours of the morning. The one that had been circling here for 3 days and 3 nights with its partner plane is now circling Smilog Woods. And not just anywhere in Smilog Woods, it's circling the exact impact site. The exact impact site.
Can you explain to us exactly what that means when you say the radar return? I mean, we see the purple circles. I'm assuming these are tracked radar, but how does that work a little bit? I'm not that familiar with it, and our audience may not be.
Okay, wherever that plane flies will leave a trail behind it on radar. And that is its exact flight pattern over and over and over again.
Ah, okay. So it's the circles in particular over and over.
And the circle got smaller and smaller until it was literally right over the impact site. The white line on the picture underneath is the trajectory of the green object into Smilog Woods, directly into the impact site. And the red dot that you see right in the center on the hospital itself is where we received a witness testimony from a member of staff there who was working that night. And Gary will go into those details shortly.
And that's the same red dot the radar returns.
That's the ZZ418 plane that had been here with its partner plane, the top secret reconnaissance and surveillance aircraft that works in tandem with an E3 Sentry. We had 2 E3 Sentries that night. One was from NATO and one was from the Royal Air Force. This was huge.
Yeah, that's
When we got back to my house, I told David and Donna, who'd been watching with us that night, what we'd found. And so we hatched a plan to go up the very next morning with cameras to film, to go through the debris field and find the impact site. I wanted to find the impact crater. I wanted to know what had happened to this green object. And that's exactly what we did. I woke up the next morning, my hair was completely white. Completely white. I mean, I am salt and pepper now. This was 5 years ago, and I'm not completely grey. I'm getting there. To the untrained eye, this might not look very much at all, but there are more pictures. These are 14-inch thick trunks, snapped 20 feet in the air, at mid-trunk.
Wow.
And just in one location. An impossibility in nature. The kinetic energy needed to snap a tree is huge. But to snap 6 in this one spot
is the broken piece, though. You can see that that's not dead wood. The color of that wood that's on the ground, where you show the log, it's fresh. It was a living tree. So this wasn't an old tree that had died and just broke off during a storm or something like that.
Right, this is exploded. This is right. If you go to the next slide, I think there's more pictures of the impact site here. I don't know if I included the video. There may be the video there.
Yeah, I can't zoom on, but let me play it in this format. Oh yeah, it's an MP4. Let me see. I will try to play it. Bear with me. I can find it here. I don't want to give everything away. Let me not share for a moment. Hang on.
If you're able to play the video, you'll see my hair is completely white.
Let me try. I wasn't aware that there was a video in there. I didn't miss that.
Which was quite shocking the next morning, cleaning my teeth, and I looked up and whoa, who's that? You know.
It's when you're supposed to be in that shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, to happen. Yeah. But if you're saying that you felt, you know, which I've heard that before, but that it was a great feeling, it's you shouldn't have gotten that. So we're playing the video.
Hold on. Almost there. It's my software. It's not behaving well today, so bear with me. We're going to get a little into the void, and there we go. We'll bring up the video. Play that for you.
Excuse me.
Let me.
Okay. Well, there are 4 of us in this picture. Steve, my friend, David, and Donna. And we'd gone to the impact site.
That's
I hope it plays for you. It's really laggy, yeah, very slow.
It's okay though. We can see it.
Yeah, it's coming across the viewers pretty well. So
Okay, well, there were burn marks on all the surrounding trees in this area, but the burn marks were white. They were not black. And there were injuries that the other trees in the surrounding area had sustained. All the bark had been stripped, and the living wood had curled outwards towards you, implying something very big and very heavy had been dragged upwards against those trees. The trees themselves that have been left standing were distended, the same as the ones that were in the debris trail. They too were distended, like they were at the point of explosion from the inside, like some kind of energy wave had touched them. It could have been the force field around the green object, perhaps. I don't know. And I wouldn't want to guess.
no.
The EMF in this area was huge, and the trail leading into this area was huge. By the following morning, they'd already started to clean it up. Huge branches that had laid left and right of us on the morning had already been moved and dragged into huge piles. So the cleanup operation had already started. I was waiting for you to, so slow.
let me go back to the.
Anyway, yeah. If you skip on, there are some pictures, and I want to just finish up by telling you what the excuses were by the Forestry Commission, because they are laughable. Here you go. These are the 6 trees and you can see bottom left-hand corner how big these trees were. These were living trees. They're healthy, living trees. There's 2 of them there.
Yeah.
One laid from left to right and one laid straight out in front of you. These trees are 60 feet long.
Wow.
And they've been snapped off mid-trunk.
Yep.
This is the amount of energy, and there were 6 of them needed to snap a tree is huge.
Absolutely.
You know, you can drive a car into a tree and the tree won't snap.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Something just
so
came.
it was a huge amount of energy, and for every tree that object hit, it slowed down.
Right.
So this was the
Impact.
the resting place. The impact site. If you move on to the next slide. Again, the canopies of these trees have been snapped off. They're snapped. That, you know, something altitude came in there.
Yeah.
And snapped those canopies off.
You can see there right at the top is just.
Yeah, it's cleanly snapped.
Below it, looking pretty healthy, like this branch coming off.
And these are big trees. You know, it doesn't really do it justice. You know, the photographs don't give you the scale how big these trees were.
Sure.
These are some of the burn marks that were left on the trees, and there was a really pungent smell of sulfur in the air, a bit like sulfur and a bit like burning rubber. And a military friend of mine have said that sounds like cordite to me, like an explosion. And that was right throughout Smilog Woods and all around the hospital. So it wasn't just in Smilog Woods, the smell. It actually drifted over into the neighbouring village of Bather, and the residents there could smell it too. Anyway, it was also snowing in this location.
Now,
Again,
I wanted to ask you about that before. What you were saying about the texture of the snow. What kind of texture were you talking about?
Right.
What did it feel like?
Okay, it was almost spongy to the touch. It resembled, when you looked at it, like a hailstone in like a beanbag ball. And when you squeezed it, it had some resistance to it. Like the texture was wrong. But you could squeeze it between your fingers and it would leave a perfectly round circle on your thumb. It would eventually dissolve, but it wouldn't dissolve immediately. It was almost marshmallowy or perhaps a little bit plasticky. It just didn't resemble
Snow.
normal snow.
It's bizarre.
But something had changed in both areas, both at the impact site and where the pyramid came in, the resonance had changed there.
Mhm.
Anyway, the Forestry Commission felled all of the trees that this green object touched. All of the debris trail was felled by the Forestry Commission. These are some of the smaller injuries, but there is one tree there, if you flick through, that has a 2 foot by 1 foot wound on it.
We
And
see
this
it.
tree is particularly distended. And the wood itself
It's bold.
has curled. Yep. The shadows on the trunk that you can see there, where I've tried to enhance it actually, is the wood curled outwards towards you. This is living wood. And again, implying something very heavy has been dragged upwards against that tree. I don't know if you've ever curled a piece of paper with a pair of scissors or with a blade of some kind, but it will curl upwards. It's the same principle, but I've never seen it on living wood.
No.
The next slide, and I'll finish up quite quickly because we're getting pushed for time.
No, we
Okay.
have an hour.
After the event, we had some very strange men and women come and camp in the fields here, and they gave 2 fake cover stories as to who they were. That they were a fracking survey team, which didn't go down very well in the village at all, or that they were Vodafone, a mobile phone company.
Right.
But they were neither. They were actually doing a covert operation. They desperately tried to behave like civilians, but they were not.
You could tell.
They were searching the fields wearing white forensic suits on their hands and knees where this pyramid had come in. Because as I said before, it didn't come down from outer space. It came through something into our dimension. And every time anybody would walk past them, they would all stop what they were doing and they'd stand up and stare at you until you were out of sight. Like a weird cult 60s movie, for real.
Right.
Again, these are just some of the statements from people, where we saw 2 armed guards. They were carrying real guns with live ammunition. They didn't have yellow caps in the end of their guns, implying they were carrying blanks. And they told us they were doing a military exercise in case of an emergency situation. So now we've been told 3 different stories. Right. Now I want, this had tweaked my curiosity, so I wanted to go over and see what was going on. And I'd walked into the field where the campsite was, and initially it started to walk around the perimeter, and I said to Steve, my friend who was with me, come on, I want to get closer. So we'd cut across the field, and a huge dog that I now know to be some kind of large pit bull type dog had run out of the tents towards us. And I asked Steve to pick up my little dog because I didn't want her to get bitten. And this dog started to circle us. And I shouted to 2 men that I could see in one of the tents, "You're no country boys, are you? This is nearly lambing season. Put your dog on a lead. The farmer's got a shotgun and he's not afraid to use it." And with that, this guy's pulled his dog back and he's gone back instantly. But I got an answer, which was what? So that was my in, if you like. So I've walked up the middle of their camp and covertly taken photographs of their camp, because without these photographs, there'd be no evidence at all these people were ever here. And I asked them who they were, and they told me they were Vodafone. So within 10 minutes, I've been told 2 different stories. They're either doing a military exercise in case of an emergency situation, or they're Vodafone. Well, anyway, I'd gone home. In the tent, they were operating this large laptop type device. Only it wasn't a laptop, and they didn't want me to see what they were doing. They used actually 2 hands to close the lid of this thing. And they had 3 of these objects. One in the command officer's tent, which is where I was stood. One in the fields where they were doing the forensic search. And one on the Jeep at the end of the trail. And they had a big blue tarpaulin up so you couldn't see what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, it's quite clear that they were triangulating something into that area. And I believe they were triangulating a satellite into that area. Donna went over and she took some photographs of the men and women in the fields. One of them is still wearing his forensic suit and operating one of those laptop type devices. And she could hear them saying, hurry up, find it. They were looking for something specific. What it was they were looking for, I don't know. maybe a cap came off when they fired that green object out at the top of the pyramid, or maybe when it traversed through space, it dragged space rocks with it. We don't know. But they were searching for something, and they didn't want us to see what it was they were doing. Well, if you could go to the next slide.
Sure. Yeah, that's very
And I will.
shady with the dark, for sure.
Getting three different stories is shading itself.
Of course.
It's great that you took pictures for the evidence.
And just so our stateside listeners know, Vodafone is a cell phone company in the UK.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Chris works with.
I work in the phone world, so I know a little bit about them. But a lot of people aren't familiar with Vodafone here in the States. They're like a Verizon. Here we go. So we've got
I can't. Is it frozen on you?
It's not frozen on our side. Put up the Donna statement picture. It shows people through a fence looking around, and again the tarp says I
Right. Well, these are some of the people, and you can just see the guy at the back operating the laptop type device, and
Yes.
he's still wearing his white forensic suit. But they
Yep.
were using ground penetrating radar also, which is a little bit strange for a field in the middle of Pentyrch. No one had permission to be there to test the ground. No one had permission to camp there. And Gary will show you the evidence for this.
That's
Uh,
weird that they're using CPR. Why would they be doing that? What are they looking for in the ground?
Right. These are questions that need to be answered.
Sure.
But if it weren't for these photographs, there'd be no evidence these people were ever here.
Very
Ever.
true. You did a great job.
That's
Oh well,
excellent.
no, there's a lot more.
Good. Well, we got plenty of time.
Yeah, plenty
So
of
you
time.
guys know we have almost an hour.
Okay, go straight to the next one because we haven't even started on the evidence yet, and Gary's going to be presenting that, and it's huge. It's huge.
I read it up on YouTube. It's awesome, but
Quite the story.
it's great. You can tell how much of a cover-up this is.
We've caught the Ministry of Defence lying 7 times so far. 7 times. I think to catch them out once, which would have been good, but 7 times is immense. If you could go on to the next slide, please.
I'm on scanning and searching equipment, or should I go beyond that?
No, go beyond that. I think we've done the men in the fields.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to get to the Forestry Commission where they felled the trees.
Okay.
Okay. This is what where the debris trail was, and across and directly in front of you is the impact site. You just see the tops of the trees that there that have been cut off. Look on the right-hand side of the picture. So we asked the Forestry Commission why they felled these trees, and they told us that it was larch disease. So I don't know if you want to flick to the next slide.
Sure.
And I'll try and get through this quickly because there's quite a lot of evidence.
Okay. No problem.
And Gary needs time to talk, bless him. He's been sitting here patiently.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary. This is National Resources Rails email response.
Okay, right. Well, Gary wrote to them and asked them why they felled the trees, and they told us Phytophthora ramorum, which is larch disease. And that's why they felled these trees. Well, if you go straight on to the next slide, I actually found a place in this country, in Birmingham, that really did have larch disease. And it's such a harmful pathogen. They have really strict procedures on how to deal with this stuff. And they have to do what they call a sanitized felling, which means absolutely everything has to be removed. And they must leave the land free and fallow for a minimum period of 3 years.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So
They have to wear Coverup, wash their equipment. It has to be a licensed contractor to take it away. This is Lickey Hills in Birmingham.
Mhm.
And it was, or used to be, a beautiful woodland walk. And as you can see, in the top right-hand picture, all the branches have been placed together.
Mhm.
And the bottom two pictures are where they've started to clear the area. This was a woodland, and everything is gone. The next picture also will show more evidence of what a sanitized felling should look like.
Right. So people who are listening to the podcast, just so they know, this is an organized cleanup. You see clean cuts on the trees. They're not broken in any way. It's clearly
No, this is a different place in Birmingham to show the difference between a sanitized felling and
Mhm.
what they did at Smilog Woods. Okay, so this is a sanitized felling,
Mhm.
and the
Yep.
next picture also will show a sanitized felling.
Right.
And then we'll go back to Smilog Woods and you'll see the difference.
You know, a lot of trees have been removed. It's clearly an organized event. Branches are stacked up. The trees are cut with saws. Very, very different than what we saw in Pentyrch.
Right. Again, once they'd finished, this is what this beautiful arboretum looked like. There was nothing left. And there were warning signs placed to wash your dog paws, your boots, and your bike wheels so as not to spread this harmful pathogen off site.
Sure.
Because it has now affected over 150 different varieties of plant and tree. And eventually it could wipe out some of our ancient forests. But this is what they did at Smilog Woods. Does this look like a sanitized felling to you?
No.
They left everything there. And in amongst all of this debris, they replanted already.
Really?
So not only didn't they clear the area, on the picture on the right-hand side is a copy of the same picture.
Mhm.
But you see mounds of clay-coloured soil.
Mhm.
And in the tops of that clay-covered soil are new trees that they have planted in amongst all of this debris, which they shouldn't have done. So again, if you could just flick to the next slide, because it gets better. That is not a sanitized felling.
No.
No, not at all.
So not at all. So again, if you go on to the next one, because I can get through these quite quickly.
Okay, sure.
But just so I can get to the point, really. Otherwise, people are going to be looking at dead trees.
No worries. This is the freedom of information.
Okay. Okay, this is what the impact site looks like 18 months after the event, and everything in that area is dead. And it's completely dead because there's really high EMF in that area from the craft. And EMF has a devastating effect on trees. In fact, trees near cell towers don't grow. Now, this was the Freedom of Information response that we got from them. And to cut it short, it was basically that they followed. Oh, go back one.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. Just the highlighted stuff now that they followed their published guidance for biosecurity, and they undertook the management for the site required for core zone 1, which is where they were. And unlike elsewhere in Wales, the time limit on these operations did apply to them. But it applies to everybody else in Wales. It applies to everybody else in the UK. In fact, it applies to everyone else, but just not this one forest. And under their own felling licenses, they're not allowed to fell the trees between the 1st of October and the 30th of June. And the reason why they shouldn't do this is because they cannot tell if a tree is infected with larch disease if it is defoliated. And in doing so, they can actually circumvent their own biosecurity, which they so proudly announced in their Freedom of Information answer. The problem is they felled the trees in December of 2016 and January of 2017, circumventing their own biosecurity. And if these trees were indeed infected with larch disease, would have spread the spores right across their forest. But they weren't infected with larch disease, and now I can prove it. And it actually says there in this memorandum that it applies from the 1st of October each year until the 30th of June the following year, for which, it would be able to determine the health of the tree. So between that time, they're unable to do that. So in hindsight, let's say that they checked the trees the year before and found larch disease. So they told us that they'd received a plant health notice, that a plant health notice had been placed on Smileogue Woods, and so that's why they put the trees down. Well, if you go on to the next slide, and this took me quite a bit of research to find, be convicted by your own words, I say. And it's a map of every single plant health notice that has ever been issued in Wales for the last 10 years.
Indeed, we're
And it
looking
looks
at your red dot,
it is color-coded,
yellow dot showing you where these
right? It is color-coded.
occurred. Yeah.
And so to make it easier, this goes from 2010 to 2018. So 8 years, I do apologize. But nowhere between, 2013, 2014, 2015 or 2016 was there a plant health notice placed on Smileogue Woods. Well, if you go on to the next slide, it zooms in a little bit more to show you where Smileogue Woods and the hospital are located.
Okay.
And you'll see.
Talk us through this because I'm not sure where that is on this map. We're looking at the map.
Okay.
Dots, of course, there are many dots in certain areas that don't have
Right.
dots.
Okay. Well, this is from the Forestry Commission for Phytophthora ramorum, which is larch disease, for the plant health notices.
Sure.
Okay. In the middle of this one picture that you're looking at, you'll see a road, and its number is A4119.
Yes.
Can you see that?
Right there in the middle.
It's actually in the gap.
Yep.
Okay, right there in the middle. And on the left-hand side of that road, just under the first one, actually, is where the hospital is located. And next to the hospital is Smileogue Woods. And as you can see, there are no dots there at the moment. But if you go to the next slide, which is zoomed in a little bit more, it actually shows where the hospital is located.
Okay.
Where Smileogue Woods is located. In fact, the no health notices have ever been placed on Smileogue Woods in the last 8 years that we know of.
Dots.
Ever.
So problem does
yeah,
a large problem, but this is not an area that's affected.
No. And if you go to the next slide.
Oh yeah, okay, and that now we see the X's that show the Smileogue.
That's right, and it'll show you where Smileogue Woods is located and where the hospital is located. And there has never been a plant health notice placed on those woods ever for larch disease. The reason why those trees were felled was because they were damaged. Right. And they were damaged by something going through that forest at great speed. So fast that it exploded those trees on the way through. They hadn't just snapped a mid-trunk. It takes an awful lot of energy to snap a single tree. Absolutely. But to snap as many as it did in a perfectly straight line, something went through those woods that emitted extremely high EMF. Now, Gary's going to present some of the evidence for you. And at the end, if we've still got time to ask as many questions, please.
Excellent. Yes, we will do that. And just again, to reiterate for the listeners and people who can't see the visuals, those trees are snapped and broken, as if they were like a storm or something, except they're living trees. They're not dead trees. Mm-hmm. They're broken very high up. Something hit them with a great, powerful force. Yeah. Absolutely. Right. Through. And surely, the evidence that you've given shows where they have cleaned everything up and wanted people to forget about this little incident.
Right. And also prove now that the excuse that they gave that it was larch disease for felling those trees is absolutely untrue. By their own words, by their own management strategy, there has never been larch disease found in those woods, ever. And they said they received a plant health notice, which clearly they haven't. But I'm going to pass you on to Gary to present some of the evidence now, because I've told you briefly what's happened, but he will confirm what's been found.
Thank you,
so
we just turn it a little bit.
Yeah. Gary Jones, peeps.
Hello. Okay.
First slide then.
Yeah, if you can bring up the first slide, it's a Mike Hembry comment that was left about a week after the event itself on February 26, 2016. And I don't know if you want to zoom into that, but I'll just tell you the salient points of it. This was a potential third witness, we call it, going by the name of Mike Hembry. I don't believe that that is the real name. I think the person's trying to keep themselves anonymous. But in the areas that I've underlined in red, you can zoom in if you'd like, yes. I'm not going to read all that. I'll leave it for your viewers. But what he's basically saying is he noticed, he calls it an AWACS, radar tracking plane, which is what we call an E3 Sentry here in Britain. And he was walking his dog on the night in question. And the road he was walking on is a place called Pentyrch Road, which is just above the area where this craft was seen. It's a road that runs along the farmlands there. And what he's saying is, down by the sort of like second part of the red line, is that he's talking about how there were 5 large planes and they were all in the same circle, right around the area where this craft had came in. And he's talking about a bright red pulsing light and then another and another, which formed the shape of a triangle, and it came down from the clouds. Now, this is very interesting because this is exactly more or less what Kaz and Dave have said. And this person here is saying that they've also seen this red pulsing light, which formed the shape of a triangle. Now, as he goes further down, he's talking about how they were like this green orb. It shot up in the middle and started moving very fast and bobbing around, and it headed northwest. Well, that direction, if you look at it on a map, is in the area of Lantrissan. It leads to Lantrissan, and that's what Kaz was showing you earlier on with the trajectory of what the green object that went into the Lantrissan Common and into Smilark Woods.
Yes.
So this, whoever this person may be, and maybe if they're listening one day, they'll come forward, or even anonymously. We won't reveal details. They can tell us in more detail what they saw. But this is just a week after. You can see on the date, look, it says on the 6th of March, 2016. So that's just over a week. Just over a week after it happened. And we didn't start investigating this until around October 2017, which is like 20 months or so after. Now, if you can go to the next slide.
I would just like to note there, this letter that I hope you get to the bottom of this, but we'll say one thing: they knew that it was coming. Right?
Yes, the attitude of the planes and the way it was moving, and because he's talking about this AWACS E3 Sentry, as we call it, the night before, the NATO airplane that was seen, and given the way they were behaving on the night when he was walking his dog, clearly they said they knew it was coming because they were all prepared. It was all prepared, and we'll see that as we go forward. Now, this is planning permission. These are FOIs asking the council, did anyone have planning permission for the fields in the Pentyrch there? Now, normally, if you want to set up some kind of camp or site, you know, for any kind of operation, whatever it may be, you have to have planning permission. You know, you got to get a license or some sort of authorization. And if you go to the next slide.
Sure.
Yeah, if you go to the next slide, what you're going to see is that there was no planning permission granted for any of those days in question. Nobody months before or months after, or even for the
2 years.
Yeah, for the whole 2 years. Can you go to the next slide?
Yep, and it shows that you looked for.
Yeah, it'll lag here.
Yep. Okay.
Hopefully it'll come up. Well, what you're going to see anyway is that there's nothing there. There's no. Okay, that's not what I was looking for.
That's when they lied about everything.
Yeah, we'll get to that now. Okay. What you were going to see in the other slide anyway is that they didn't give permission, but this is just another one of the slides that we did, FOIs, for could the people tell us why they were in the fields, and when they were approached by local residents, when it was pressed upon them, why they try acting like civilians. And basically what they're saying is that they've lied about their identity. They said they were Vodafone, they said they were a fracking survey team. They've basically lied about their identity, and what they've done at certain point is that they've used Section 26, which in FOI terms for the military means not in the public interest. They're telling us mind your own business, and Section 26 is just a way of blanketing everything, so they don't have to give us sort of at least an answer. It's just a way to cover things up and not tell us anything. If you go to the next slide,
And it means it was a covert operation and not an exercise.
yes.
Right. And when we say FOI, freedom of information.
Right.
So this is something you file in the UK, obviously.
Yeah, we filed a lot of freedom of information requests, trying to get answers for everything. And as Kaz has said, we've caught them in a lie at least 7 times, the MOD. They're trying to backtrack a lot of stuff as well now by saying, oh, we didn't say that. This information wasn't meant to be released. Every time we update our investigation, they try to backtrack and say other things. So they're the ones who are lying. We're the ones telling the truth.
Right.
Right.
2 years and 8 months, isn't it? Planes.
At the planes, yeah, we'll get to that. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, now this is a website that the government used, the MOD and the RAF, to announce certain times that they will be having exercises, they're military exercises. Now, what's interesting about what I've highlighted there is that there's no commence date for this. You can see it there, look, in the other underlines, they've got an announcement date or something that's been added. And then underneath, there's a commence date. It's usually a couple of days or a week after. But it seems they've just slid in the 25th of February 2016 to sort of say, oh, it was an announcement made. But there's no commence date there for it.
Right. There's no information.
Or what they're doing.
Or what they were doing. So basically, they're just trying to add evidence at a later time. And it's just very interesting that, we've looked at so much evidence on this now. It's clear that they were not here for an exercise. It was a real life event. This was just something that I found in the beginning. There's no commence date for it, which is very, very strange. All the things they would do normally, the way the procedures would go forward, in this case, it's the complete opposite of that. So if you can go to the next slide, please, I'll show you something about iStar.
Okay.
Are we on it?
I can't see it yet.
It's the locations and stuff. It seems like it takes a few seconds to get over to you.
Yeah, we got a bit of a lag here, but it's okay. Once it comes up, I'll tell you what we're looking at.
So it says on NOTAM map locations.
Okay, yes, this is very good here. Now, this is actually a notice to airmen. These are put on the government's or official airspace websites to let people know that there's a notice to airmen that there's an exercise going on. No non-civilian craft are not allowed in here. It's only military aircraft that can go in. Now, the 2 circles you see, the yellow one, which is just at the bottom of the screen there, that's where you can see the word Lantricent in there. Now, Pentyrch is sort of just to the right of Lantricent a little bit. That yellow circle there is where a lot of the military and their aircraft were circling around. The second red circle that you see is where they sort of extended to a second zone. And that's where they were flying a lot of Chinook helicopters and other aircraft, sort of like forming a boundary, sort of like a net, if you will, to encompass the smaller yellow one. Now, what you're seeing with the yellow dots there is that on a website called Wave 101, it's like a Swansea radio station. These were people who were leaving comments and complaining or talking about the loud noises from the military that night. And what I decided to do was to just show you how that when you see to the left of the red circle there, the 9 o'clock position, those yellow markers are outside of the NOTAM. And these were coming around, say, after 4:30 in the morning. It seems whatever they've done here in the NOTAM areas, some of the objects were seen going westward over Swansea, being followed by planes and jets and military helicopters and things. And we do have a witness. We do have a witness who we talked to about this. He saw a cluster of green lights, and they were being followed or pursued, if you will, by military jets, planes, and helicopters. And this is 50 miles outside of the actual NOTAM. So if they're doing an exercise, it's inside the area that they've cordoned off for themselves, the NOTAM area, right? Mm-hmm. That would be one thing. But they're going outside of that, and they're pursuing, I can say, these green cluster of lights, which are more or less these barrels or these orbs that came out of the large craft that was initially seen in the fields of Pentyrch. Now, what I'm trying to say is that if this is a military exercise, they wouldn't be doing this. First of all, we've had comments now from people who know about military exercises. They would never do them over a public airspace,
It's very
especially not in the middle of the night, because there's a place called Sennybridge not too far from Pentyrch, 30 miles northwesterly direction, and they can practice there all they want. They can do whatever they want, live fire exercises. Why would you go there? Because we asked them that, and they said there's something about the geography of the area. I said, what are you talking about? The South Wales Valley areas are all valleys that are all the same.
They wouldn't do it for field exercise.
They wouldn't do that, no.
no.
If you can go to the next slide, please. Yes. Now, this is what Kaz with the smaller plane and the E3 Sentry. Now, this is something we came across during our, online searches when I was trying to figure out what's going on here. Now, ISTAR is an acronym for Intelligence, Surveillance, Target Acquisition, and Reconnaissance. And the smaller plane, the Shadow R1, or the Beechcraft 300 as it's called, what's interesting about this plane is it was taken out of service for a while, and then it was brought back in, I believe around 2011, 2012, and it was kitted with all kinds of new technology. One of them we know, of course, is a FLIR system, a forward-looking infrared. But it's got stuff inside of it that we don't know about. It is so top secret. Even Air Force people who have talked about it will not comment on it. They'll just say it's top secret, so we don't know what's inside. But one of the things I've been able to maybe at least glean some inside information on this is that it's got some kind of advanced radar system inside of it, which is much more than what the E3 Sentry has. And you can see a list of the E3 Sentry abilities there. But this one seems to be able to tap into satellites, tap into communications. It can survey the ground, survey the air. It can monitor all kinds of activity in air pressure or weather or electromagnetic things. I don't know exactly how it works, but it's just so damn top notch. And it would explain why this thing is circling, because it's constantly taking measurements of something, and that's how it knows this thing is coming here. That's how I explain that. And as you can see, the E3 Sentry works in tandem with the Shadow R1, the Beechcraft there, because that will deploy assets, military, Air Force, and on the ground where they need to go at any given time, up to date, on site, which is how they were able to close into this field with those planes circling, and also the other planes that came into the area when they were chasing that green object northwest. So this is a very sophisticated, highly organized, well-funded, and well-trained lot of people. This is not a military exercise by no stretch of the imagination.
They were waiting for me to drop my hanky. Gari.
Oh yes, that's the joke we said. Yeah, Kaz here's my hanky. Look, go boys. Okay, so these are some of the aircraft that I was able to find. Now there's a website. Can't remember the name of it. I think it's probably in the top left corner. But this is a group of people who do. Some people do plane spotting, some people do train spotting, and some people do military aircraft spotting. And this is a website dedicated to that, because when the planes are giving off their transponder signals, if you've got a radio or a device that can track it, you can find the log numbers of them, the tail numbers, and you can basically see where people have made entries into blogs and things. And I use this to track the military's movements, because for at least a week before the 26th, they were training up in a place called RAF Leeming, which is North England way, in Durham, yes. Now, they were practicing fast drops, low flying exercises, on ground landing and taking off quickly, various things. But these are some of the craft that came from North England down to North Wales. And as you can see, down to South Wales, sorry, I apologize. As you can see, you've got Lynx, Merlins, C-130s, Hercules aircraft. And if you go to the next slide.
So the listeners know screen. It's a variety of military.
A big variety.
They were all involved and all in the air, all at the same time.
Yeah, they were all airborne at the same time, waiting for this thing to happen. All knowing what they were doing, organized and everything. So if we go to the next slide, please.
There you go. Interesting OTT.
Okay, now this is another site that tracks. They go to RAF bases and they like to see what's coming in, what's taking off, what's flying over. Now this is from the Thursday, I believe. This is the NATO. NATO were involved in this. This is their E3 Sentry plane. You can see its tail number is there, look, LXN90454, I believe. And that was tracked over St. Athens area in South Wales the day before. This is the one that our Mike Hembry character saw the day before. We know that this thing was here, and it's tracked there on one of the Cardiff-based military, plane spotter type website. So I put in that there just to show you that we've been able to track quite a few of these aircraft, and they were here for days before, some of them, circling backwards and forwards. What is all this aircraft doing here? It has no business being over this area, unless, of course, they're waiting for something.
And before any NOTAM was issued.
Oh, yes, and before any NOTAM was issued. So let's just get that straight. If you could please go to the next slide.
So all this is going on.
Yeah, these are just, I'm just putting these out there because these are some of the Chinook helicopters that were involved. One of them was actually circling over my house not long after the time when Kaz and Dave were seeing this object by the gate. And what it was doing is it came in real low. It was almost skimming my rooftop. If I was on the roof, I probably could have jumped up and touched it. Wow. And it was going around every 5, maybe 6 minutes, low, loud. Very, very,
very loud.
Very, very annoying, I will say. And it was doing this for about an hour, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, around that time. And yeah, so this is where they were in the red circle. Remember the red circle I showed you? The yellow circles were all the main craft were, and some of them stretched out to the other sides, so you could close it all in. You see, and we had people telling us that they were noticing Apache helicopters flying low below the trees, like waiting for something. Other ones that were circling seemed to be waiting for some order to come in or go somewhere else. Very strange behavior. So if you go to the next slide, please.
You should see it.
And by the way, this was going on for 7 hours, from midnight till 7 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
This is not just like, show up for an hour and do something and go home, lads. No, they were clearly here for.
I think they hovered low over people's houses to hide.
They did actually, yeah.
Explosions.
Yeah, they knew.
That's them going backwards and forwards.
Yeah, this particular slide here, this one is very interesting because Dave, who's another key witness, the primary witness, but he hasn't come forward yet, but he will talk to you in private if he feels he can trust you. He says here, look, I could only see 2 Apaches after this, but could hear twin rotor Chinooks coming from St. Athens in the distance. Now, this is after the explosion over the Lantris and Common, and we'll get to that in a sec. But it says they were flying back to start Athens and then back to Lantris, and there were 2 Apaches following it. Now this one, you can see that it was landing forwards and backwards. You can see on the top there, look, it was landing and departing, and this was going to Smilog Wood.
Yeah,
this was collecting whatever it was they shot down over the green object that it more or less was, but when that impacted into that site. And clearly, this thing was being escorted by the 2 Apaches. The one had landed at Cardiff International Airport. This all fits a timeline that we've established through witness testimonies, online research, and investigations, and everything else. Everything is, as you can see, the tail numbers match, the time of everything matches, and anyone who's looked at the more fuller presentations that we've done, because we're only getting into some of the evidence here, this is the military side of things, you will see that it really does fit. And if you go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, this is the concise version.
Yeah, this is just concise because we could talk for 10 hours, we could do this for 10 hours and still not get anywhere. Well, get quite a bit there under.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, there's different Apache helicopters. The Z 1200, the 1207, 1205. See
Yeah,
these-
there's a lot of vehicles involved. Yeah, these are some of the Apaches. You can go to the next slide if you want.
20
But
gunships.
yeah, but these are serious helicopters armed with, Hellfire missiles and machine guns and rockets. One of these things alone can do a lot of damage. But we got 3 of them,
Oh, hell yeah.
armed and ready.
And yeah,
And these were flying low over people's houses, waiting in ambush or something for something to come over. Now we're on to Linda Moulton Howe.
mhm.
Now, she got in contact with us not long after we started our investigations, because by then we were putting stuff online. And I think it was one of her agents or PMs or something got in contact with her. And from there, we were able to, present some of the evidence to her. And she spoke about this on George Norrie's Coast to Coast. I do believe it's George Norrie, yes?
Yes.
And this is how we were able to get some extra testimonies from people who worked at the Royal Glamorgan Hospital. And if you go to the next slide, we can go into detail about that.
All right.
But the fact Linda Moulton Howe is taking an interest in it shows.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
shows
because the witnesses contacted them.
Yes, the next slide you are going to see, the witness contacted her, and Linda passed this email on to us.
Says, hi, Linda. I was listening to your very recent
Yeah.
included talking to Gareth Jones from the Swansea UFO Network.
Yeah, I can't see it on my screen yet.
High strangeness. And around, I don't know how to pronounce that, Latricent, South Wales. I was on duty as a nurse in the hospital that night, February 26, 2016, and I can explain what I experienced, and then goes on to
Here we
explain
are.
the experience. Yeah. Hearing the explosions, after hearing these explosions, part of it, I automatically thought that it was a terrorist attack, and as this was a sign of the times that we are unfortunately living in, I also contacted hospital security to find out if they were aware of what was going on. Suffice to say, I had no idea what it was all about. And there's some more.
Yeah,
Next.
you can go to the
two.
next one. Yeah, you can go to the next slide if you want, because
It's the second half of their statement.
it's quite an extended email, this.
Oh, yeah, I see. I'll read a little of this for our listeners, those who can't read this.
Yeah, and you read it and I'll do a summary for you on it.
Sure. I then went outside and to the entrance, and the smoke that was around resembled a very foggy night. It is correct that the smell of sulfur was around.
I think it's already on there.
The sulfur. I didn't see any lights, but then again, I wouldn't have seen them due to the smoke. I did, however, hear a lot of noise, like aircraft and also helicopters. I had to go back to my workplace very shortly afterwards, and that was where it ended for me. I phoned security again and asked them if they had any information concerning what had happened, and they told me that there had been a military exercise, and that was it. I don't believe it was a military exercise at all, basically for the same reason as Gareth Jones. A member of the staff informed me that all roads in the local area were closed by the police, and I can assure you that they must have drafted in police from outside of the area, because with the cutbacks on the police force, there are not many on duty at night, and the number outside around 10 constables and a sergeant in that area. The only mention in the media was a military exercise, and that this was on the Wales online news app. The media here, it was the same as the rest in the UK, and it had its own narrative and agenda. I don't believe we will ever get to the truth of this incident. I'll leave it there.
Yes, that's proving quite difficult. Now, I want to say something about the phone call, right? Because initially, you can see from the email, the person is saying that they don't know anything about this, and the security are completely dumbfounded. Now, how the military exercise narrative got put in there is that somebody had phoned the hospital from outside and told them that their services would not be necessary, telling them that it's just a military exercise, and that this is nothing more than that. But as you can see from the person there, they know it was not an exercise. The explosions gave them the impression that terrorism attacks were happening.
Sure.
Such was the force of the explosion and the shaking of the hospital and everything else. And of course, when she went to phone security again, someone from outside had called the hospital and told them, right, that this is just a military exercise and your services won't be needed. So obviously, and this is about the time that the Apache helicopter had been affected by the explosion it had caused. Yeah. I just want to talk about some of the things because, they said the security was not informed until after. The first thoughts of this lady is that it was a terrorist attack. The they were informed later, that this was a military exercise. And as for the police blocking the roads, I mean, there's not that many police around here, and yet it seems whoever these people were more or less military-style police, because one of the things, which I don't think we got in the slides, but I will talk about it, is that when the Royal Mint was contacted about this, when we did an FOI for them, they said that they had been contacted by the Welsh Counter-Terrorism Extremism Unit, I believe is the word.
Welsh Extremist Counter-Terrorism Unit.
Yes, Kaz knows it off by that. They're partly funded by the Home Office, and we've asked them about this. Why is it that why is it that you got involved in this? And their replies have been more blanket statements, telling us to mind our own business. If you can bring up the seismic signal again, the slide that you just had up.
Sure.
We'll talk about that.
The next one, because it's got the Apache.
Yeah, if you go to the next one, this is at 4:21 a.m. seismic signal that I did an FOI from the British Geological Survey, and it clearly shows the signal is there from 4:21. Around the time people were complaining online, and what's all this loud explosion happening for? And there's evidence of it right there.
Yeah, we see the clip.
If you go to the next slide, yes, we can.
Here we go. Next one's up. You see the tail of the plane. Oh, we see a helicopter there. It's like an Apache.
Yeah, the Apache.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to talk. Yeah, I'm going to talk about this because that's the Apache that was causing the sulfur-smelling smoke, as according to the MOD. Which no, it was on fire, and it had generator failure, and that obviously was the result of whatever it fired at this green object over the Lantris and Common area, because that's all fitting. And then the lady in the email actually said that the smell of sulfur was so thick, and the smoke was so thick, she couldn't see the military aircraft that were now circling around. She could hear them, but she couldn't see them. And it's interesting that when we went up to Smilock Woods sometime later, when the investigations were being done, we met two dog walkers from the Smilock Woods, and we reminded them of this night. And they were saying the sulfur smell was around for like 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
After the event.
The smoke filled the hospital.
Yeah, the smoke filled the hospital. It came in through the vents and windows. One person who was a patient there said he was awoke, his bed was shaking, and he could hear gunfire outside, most likely being aimed at the Smilock Woods area. Now, I've shown slides of this before, of the comment, and what I deduce from that, or what I conclude, is that because this plane was circling and the circles were getting smaller, and at the same time there was all this gunfire noise, and these nets, as I said, the net was closing in. Clearly they were tracking this thing, this green object, or that had got their attention earlier, and I think they were trying to force it out of the woods and try to lure it over to the Lantris and Common so they could get the kill shot in. That all fits. I mean, people can say what they want, but I've looked at all this evidence for a long time, and this fits. This clearly fits, especially from.
Well, that's the one that fired.
Yeah, that's the one that fired it, and that's the one that left that small seismic signal. Now, when I asked the British Geological Survey why this signal was there, because there's a quarry around the place, but blasting would not be done until into. Yeah, leave that up for me, but there.
Not until 7 a.m.
Yeah, not until after 7 a.m. And when they said to me that this transient signal, as they described it, has to be man-made, and the only thing that was being active that night was the military. So you tell me, and no fake incendiary or simulated explosive device is going to cause that. No way, because it ain't going to happen. And what you're seeing here now, for the people viewing this on your stream, is this is a Ministry of Defense FOI reply. These are some questions that we asked them. Why was the military conducting searches for metal on the Lantris and Common, as seen by witnesses during this exercise? Withheld under Section 26. In other words, they don't want to tell us why they were doing the council's job, which people have been asking for years. Now, I just want to say, someone has posted something on, if you can go back, please.
15 minutes.
Yeah, if you can go back. Yeah, and we had people asking. Okay, you've gone past it again. I need the FOIs. That's it. Yeah,
Okay,
they're saying Section 26 for the E3 Sentry. Why was that there? And of course, when we ask about the military helicopter, the Apache, they reckon it was diverted, yes, to the airport with cockpit generator failure. You know, and they said, "Oh, that might have been the cause of the smoke." No, it wasn't. You fired on something, and that was the cause of the smoke.
Yeah.
Sulfur
Right,
smells
right.
weeks from an engine.
This whole smoke is
Yeah.
so dense.
If you go to the next slide now, we can probably speed this up a little bit for your Q&As. This is some of the EMF detector work that we did. Now, this thing is set for 0.4 microtesla to go off on the magnetic field scale, right? We didn't really detect any electrical fields there, but we were getting magnetic field readings. And as you can see, look, we used metal detectors also to try and find if they were getting false positives. I looked at British Geological Survey maps, which we'll get to in a second. Whatever's causing that signal is artificial. It's not man-made. It's no man-made structures that would cause it. There's nothing under the ground. And it's not natural because it's dissipated now. If I took this over there now, I wouldn't find anything because there's nothing there. The EMF there is quite high. It's higher. It's around the strength that you would get it from a microwave if it's closed and sealed off, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is that was when we started mapping it out. If you go to the next slide, please.
There you go. It's there's a map.
Yeah, you'll see a map there, right, that follows, there's a series of clusters in different colored dots there, but the one I would like for you to zoom in on, yeah, the yellow one there. When we were doing a grid reference search, and anyone who knows anything about this would, you start at some corner of the field and you sort of break it into sections and you go across in a sort of zigzagging way up to left and right and so on, yeah, and you mark out where you get a beep, right? You mark out where you get a beep.
Right.
And as we continue to do this, we found some clusters here. You can see in the red dots, the green, the purple ones and the grayish ones. And we got this long yellow line. This long yellow line which goes right up, which follows the trail exactly more or less as Kaz and Dave described to us what this the path that it followed. It went sort of like close to them first, and then it went back, and then it led up to the hand of lightning. And you can see just under the word third field there, that's the ball patch area. We call it the ball patch because there's nothing seems to be growing there. It's growing back now. It's looking more healthy now, actually. But I guess we have to start calling it the patch, you know, because it's not balling anymore, though it's still quite barren in some areas, but it's looking more okay now.
And I've described the movement of that craft.
Yes.
Before.
This is something that Kaz and this was one of the real first good solid pieces of evidence that just cemented it all for me. This is the path that Kaz said it followed even before we started doing EMF detections. And the fact that it's there 22 months after the event just shows you the size and strength of the energy coming off of this thing, the fact that it's still there. And all these other fields where you see first field and the one above it, there was no signals there, except for, of course, in the bottom right area where you can see like a sort of orangey line with two dots. Those are the areas where the red and green orbs were actually seen. Now, what you're seeing here is an idea of how big this thing may have been. Now, up until where if you leave it there, if you just leave it there, this here, just to give an idea of scale of maybe how big this thing was, the length of the line is around 963 feet. Now, Kaz and Dave will tell me that this thing didn't like move all the way like that. It just moved slowly across. It didn't move much. It didn't appear to move much in terms of its distance, right? Yeah, just sort of just turning and moving slowly. It didn't go too far. And the fact that this line here is 963 feet and it didn't have to move that much gives you an idea of just probably how big this thing was.
Wow.
Now, Kaz and Dave will tell you, how big it is. If you looked at the bottom, you couldn't see the top, which gives you an indication of how big this thing is. And the bottom one there, the map distance for, is just square meters and square feet. I just thought if we close it in like that, how big would it be? That doesn't mean it's true scale, but it's massive. Okay, it fills one of the fields very easily.
Enormous.
Yeah, 46,884 square feet or 4,354 square meters, just to bring it into some scale for you. If you go to the next slide, please.
Yeah. And it talks about something we're familiar with, again, in the paranormal researchers that we are. Of EMF meters, you're putting this on
and I've since tested this with my own EMF meters to compare them. This thing is accurate. It's not bogus at all. Some people have said that other various models don't get accurate. Yeah, as you can see here, look, That's just some of the field strengths that we were getting. Some of the earlier ones that we first started using that thing, were getting as high as 1.5
Wow.
in microtesla. That's quite high, considering the normal background should be no more than 0.1.
Yeah. You're talking about milligauss up to 500 here.
Yeah, milligauss into microtesla. Yeah.
If you take a K2 meter, a common, ghost hunting, and I don't like that term, but using a paranormal investigation, you put it in a running microwave, it just goes ballistic.
Yeah. It's just to give an idea. If you go to the next slide, please, we can try hopefully get some questions for your viewers and listeners.
Unusual. Yep. Very unusual. Okay, there you go. Can you see that?
I think you'll just see some slides of us in Smilog Woods, again using the same methods, just sort of doing grid reference searches, looking at the entire area. And one of the interesting ones is that we found a line. Kaz said they found a trail of debris. Yeah, you can go for. Oh yeah, that bush there in the bottom left picture shows that the leaves are dead on that. But that's where the red orb was. The red barrel orb, yeah.
Yep.
And that has only now just started to grow back. That's where we got one of the signals. If you go forward, I can go through this quick now.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have a few minutes.
Yeah, I know. We had a bit of a delay, didn't we?
No worries.
It's okay.
So we're looking at
that's a geological survey map of the ground. It just shows it's sandstone, mudstone, and various other stones, sedimentary rock. There's no magnetic or any sort of that would throw off the meter, and it's the same for Smilog Woods. So if you go forward,
so no reason for these.
No, not at all.
You're in a field.
Yeah. That's Smilog Woods. Look, that felled area, which is not sanitized, by the way. If you go forward, you can see the meter was going off again. Look, and that's not being affected by the camera. That's being affected by the magnetic radiation that was still there. That's in the impact site. Those photographs, by the way. The flags you see are where we got more hits. I can show you a map of that if you go forward.
Okay.
One slide, please.
Couple of minutes left. So
yeah, we're gonna have. I'll try and make this quick.
Should go straight through to the FOIs.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you can see there a yellow dotted map there. That's actually the trail that Kaz and friends were following, and that leads right back into the impact site and back over to Lanchester Common where this thing was shot down.
Right there. Sure.
Yeah, and there's a G. If you want, you can skip forward a couple. You can go to the FOIs.
yeah, we're on to that.
Hospital.
Yeah, this is the hospital. We asked them, did they know anything about the military exercises? This is the police. Oh, sorry, this is the National Resource Body. Well, did they know anything about the exercise? That's Yeah, you can go forward. You can keep going forward. Most of these FOIs are the same question. Did they know anything about the military exercise? They didn't know.
Nope.
Yeah, you can keep going forward if you want. You can skip forward the slides.
Just talk about it real quick.
I think we can establish. You don't need to show them if you don't want. If you can't. If you.
We have a minutes.
Because there's a show on.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make this quick. The FOIs, they didn't know, and then later on they tried telling us, "Oh, we were informed." But they weren't. They just backfilling. So really, I would like to have covered a bit more of it, but that's really the presentation I got for you. The evidence is overwhelming on this.
Yeah.
Sorry, we ran out of time, but there's still so much more evidence, including, hopefully a new video to come out soon.
Yes,
Yeah.
please share.
Keep us in the loop, and we'll follow the Pentyrch.
I'll send you some links anyway to all this stuff.
Yeah, and the photographs of some of the objects that were seen being pursued by the military that night.
Where can people find you?
Sorry?
Where can you find you?
I'm on BitChute, BITCHUTE, under Gary Jones. Type in Pentyrch, BitChute, you'll find me there.
And a lot of the most up-to-date information is actually posted on my personal page that has been dedicated to this incident. So you can keep up to date with anything. It's Kaz Clarke.
I'm on Facebook too.
Just on my Facebook page.
Facebook. All right. Well,
yeah, I need to do a new presentation, or we do, to
we need to
put the new evidence in.
On and talk with you for a moment. Hang on, please.